Thank you, Mike. I appreciate the opportunity to present our study to the Commission and solicit some input on that. I think we can start by just giving you an outline of what we're going to go over, some general background information, and study scope. I think it's important to talk about what the study was intended to do versus what it doesn't do. I think we're going to touch on that a little bit. Results, I'm going to share some of our concept drawings with you to say these are concepts of what could be done in a technical manner at each one of these sites. And some of our conclusions and recommendations. I want to share all that with you. Again, I think Mike mentioned it, but it was, I think I want to point to the word technical feasibility. And our study was to understand what would technically feasible to do at one of these sites. And the sites are listed here. We're going to go through detail one by one, so I don't want to spend too much time naming them, but we will look at each one of them in more detail. I think it's important to talk about the need for the study. So to help highlight that, I think we're going to share some of the boating data that was put together in a recent DNR survey study, and share some of that data with you. We see Anne Arundel County has 34,000 registered boaters from the study. That's more than any other county. 21% of registered boats, and I think what's more relevant is the estimated 14,000 trailered boats that are in the county. I think that's a key number to look at, and to compare that with some of the facilities that's available for those 14,000 public facilities available for those 14,000 trailer boats to use. We see we have a Fort Smallwood Park, which was just recently constructed. That's the only county-owned facility. In the county, there's Sandy Point State Park, which is a DNR state facility managed by DNR. There's also Truxtun Park, which is the City of Annapolis facility. So we're looking at one county-owned facility and two non-county-owned facility for the 14,000 trailer boats for the public facility. We also have a Discovery Village that's under design, which is not quite available for public use yet. When you compare those results with other nearby counties to show the disparity between the Anne Arundel County and some of the other counties, we got 34,000 boaters. We got 3 public launch facilities. Baltimore County, our closest county, has 19,000 registered boaters, and then we have 12 facilities. Again, just looking at the need for the public facilities is something highlights it. Calvert County has 3. So another way of looking at the same data is compared to 10,000 registered boaters. So when you're looking at that, Baltimore County has 6 launch facilities per 10,000 registered trailer boats. Charles County is doing real well at 18 launch facilities, equivalent of 18. And then again, Anne Arundel County down here at the bottom with about 1 boat launch facility per 10,000 registered boaters. And again, it's a big discrepancy there, and I think some of this data helps highlight the need for the study and for something needs to be done with it. Fortunately, county exec did recognize this need and has, working with the commission, we're on our way to solve that. And this is something, that's why we're all here trying to solve that disparity. We're looking at providing increased public access to waterways. We're looking at providing access to north and south shore of all major waterways. That's our marching orders, and that's what we're trying to help achieve as part of this study. What the study itself was, we'll just go over the scope of what we did do. I think it's important to highlight that our starting point was set by Department of Recreation and Parks. We identified 8 sites, and they asked us to look at the sites and see what can be done at these sites. And the sites are shown here with the little boat. Shows the location of the sites, and you see they're spread evenly throughout the county. Again, that was part of the selection process that the Recs and Parks chose to try to find sites throughout the county that we could look into. What did we do? Our study started with extensive desktop analysis. What we looked at was quite a bit of parameters at each one of these sites. Existing mapped environmental resources, wetlands, we looked at underwater grasses, sensitive species areas, natural heritage areas, quite a bit of areas. Looking at physical features like as topography, hydraulic features, coastal conditions, wave climates, boating use. We looked at any kind of a historic photographs that we could find to understand how the site was used in the past. Also, master plans or previous studies that we had on file for each one of these parks. And then we also interviewed the Department of Recreation Park staff on the use of the park, character of the park, try to get as much information we could get from them. We took all that data and tried to graphically represent it on maps, and we have similar maps in the report for each site, where we overlaid multiple environmental, cultural use studies on top of each other, trying to understand what are the things we need to look at. The maps are crowded, but what there are is a tool for us to understand what can we do, basically chalking out the areas that we want to avoid, areas that we want to focus in, and help us minimize our environmental impact footprint. That helped a lot to do that. In addition to that, what we wanted to do was not just look at what we could find on historical information, but actually contact some key regulatory agencies directly about these 8 projects. So we contacted U.S. Fish and Wildlife, Department of Natural Resources, Maryland Historical Trust. We felt those are some of the key agencies we need to do upfront coordination. So we sent letters to them telling them what we were going to do and solicit input from them. And what the agencies did was commented on any potential impact that what we were trying to do would have on any regulated resources that those agencies regulate. So we took that input from all the agencies and understand what was their particular concerns. The other thing we did was we tried to identify all the agencies that would have regulatory oversight on what we're proposing to do. There's literally 12 agencies, government agencies, that will regulate what we're trying to do. That includes from federal government to state government to Coast Guard to county government. There's a list of all the approvals and different agencies at some point or another will review, comment, or license or provide permits for. Not necessarily everyone gives us a permit. Some of them are coordinating their reviews, but those are agencies that will review anything we propose to do here. So that once we got our desktop analysis done and understand some of the environmental constraints that we need to be aware of, we followed that by doing our field reconnaissance. Our field reconnaissance was done by multiple teams of scientists and engineers, visiting the sites multiple times, by land, by water, going back to the sites to figure things out a little bit. What we're trying to do was verify or actually refute what was done on our historic or on our existing condition maps. Some of those maps are outdated, some of them are not as accurate. There was the conditions changed. So we wanted to make sure we looked at the existing conditions with boots on the ground and both from water and land. And we spent quite a bit of time actually. Chris is here and he spent many trips on all the sites. So he can talk about each one of them individually later if we need to. Other things we did was we looked at potential sites for the launches. Where does it make sense to put the launch? If you're a boater, how would you get in? If you're driving a trailer, what's the best way to turn around? So some of those things we looked at in the field. Water depth, obviously, and see what parking needs would be, what area would be best suited for parking, and of course, photo document the sites. So that field work was done in a period of a couple of months with multiple visits to multiple sites. Once we did our field assessment, we started looking at developing concepts for each site. We said, okay, we want to put a site here. What are the key parameters we want to use? Access to the site was key. How are we going to get in? Number of ramps, how many boat ramps? We're going to put 1 or 2 ramps. We're going to put a pier there. We're not going to put a pier next to it. We're going to combine it with a soft launch area, so we could have a dual use with the kayak and canoe launches, and then have more trailer boat launches in the same area. Obviously, any need for dredging to keep the boat ramp viable. Stormwater management is a key thing. Every time we're working near the waters is crucial to address that. We're going to have mitigation requirements for most of these sites. We're impacting critical areas, and so there would be some mitigation required. And what other amenities we might want to include in some of the sites. I think we did pay particular attention to avoiding and minimizing impact to key environmental features. Wetlands, forests, underwater grasses, historical sites. Those were key in all of our assessment to make sure what we proposed was viable, something that could have a chance of being permitted through all those 12 agencies we talked about. We prepared cost estimates that's included in our report. We put the adequate contingencies needed in the report. We also give some ballpark estimates for engineering and permitting costs. And I think it's important to say that we also included some cost reduction options in our cost estimate. We may be able to not pave the entire parking lot, pave part of the parking lot. We may be able to phase this over time. So there are cost reduction items identified in our report that we would have, as the design process evolved, we would make decisions on those as the project moves forward. What is not included is almost as important as what is included. I think it's a big initiative, and we didn't want to overstate what the study did do and I want to make sure we talk about what it doesn't do. We did not evaluate all county lands. We only looked at the 8 that was identified by the Department of Recreation and Park for us to study. We didn't look at private properties. We did not look at commercial facilities. It's focused on 8 county-owned parks. What we also didn't do, we didn't identify any kind of other park needs, lighting, security, fencing. Those are park operational issues that were not necessarily driven by feasibility of constructing a boat ramp on one of these sites. Even though they affect and impact each other, wasn't a criteria. What we didn't also do was any road improvements. We didn't assess the Ag County roads coming to this park. We didn't do a traffic study for each park. Our focus was what was going on the park property. We didn't look at the shoreline. We didn't look at the entire park shoreline to say what part of the shoreline is eroding, what areas are not eroding. That we did not do. We didn't do boater survey. We didn't send out flyers to all the community and say, tell me how often you're going to use this boat. So we did not do a boater survey, and the public outreach wasn't done in the study itself. This is beginning of that effort. But as part of preparing the report, there was no public outreach done. It was purely a technical evaluation of what could be done at the park. We didn't define any implementation schedule. We're not necessarily recommending any or all of these sites be implemented. We're defining that this is what could be done at each one of these sites. So there was no schedule or implementation schedule as part of this study. We did come up with some results. I want to share those with you to see what we actually did do. We divided the projects into 3 tiers. Tier 1 projects are the projects we felt were constructible and addressed the need for boating access. Tier 2, it ends up being only one project. That's a project that was constructible, feasible to do it, likely to be constructible, but it was close to some other part, the existing facilities, so we don't necessarily think it's recommended. We don't necessarily think we need to build that at the first, right out of the gate. And three projects are projects we felt one feasible at this point, or they had unacceptable environmental impacts that we could see based on our assessment. Here's the result of the 3 tiers. I'll get you a minute to see what your. We got 5 projects in tier 1, One site, it's 5 sites in Tier 1. We got Stony Creek in Tier 2, and then the last 2 that we felt were unfeasible as a public boat launch facility at this time. We're going to go through each one of them. I'm going to try to go through them as quickly as I can, and we'll see what we're proposing to do at each site. Concept plans. Before I get to it, I should have talked about what we also included in there. What we're trying to do was show layout, location, dimensions of the proposed improvements. We're not trying to design the whole project. This is not a final design. These are concepts. So a lot of details are missing as far as knowing exactly how some of the details are going to work out. But it does provide for generally where the boat ramp is going to be, how you're going to get to it, and where you're going to park, and how big the thing is going to be. So it does provide those kind of parameters as layout of the site. We did incorporate environmental site design parameters. We try to incorporate that into our concepts to make sure we could address stormwater quality, water issues, and also we always kept in mind minimization of environmental impact. So again, I just said it twice, I say it again, that's the key criteria for us to develop these concepts. We feel the concepts are a starting point, not a finish, not an end product, but a starting point for any future design. Once they have enough information here for us to at least start discussing them, input from regulatory agencies, input from the commission and other factors will help drive where the project ends, but I believe there's a good starting point for what we're trying to do. We should expect changes to these modifications to these concepts. I didn't say may, I said will be required. We're very confident that we're going to need to make changes to what we're proposing here, or what we're demonstrating here. I'll start at Sally Cove. This was our, the projects are going through, is going north to south, I should say that, and they're in no particular ranking order. Reason we started with Sally Cove is the northernmost site, so we're not trying to rank the projects among themselves. We're just trying to go from north to south in no particular ranking order. Tier 1 projects, we're going to go through those first. First project, what we're trying to do, Sally Cove, is on the south shore of Curtis Creek. We try to highlight some of the existing elements that helped drive our decision process, and particularly for this site was the existing dilapidated boat ramp. There is a boat ramp on site. It's not useful, it's not being used, but there's one there. There was historic boating out for that site. There's also an existing soft launch facility there, so we recognize that, and we want to make sure whatever we propose can coexist or complement, better than coexist, complement the soft launch use. And facility currently being used as a paintball facility, so it's not very active. It's not, that's it. It's being used as a paintball facility. I won't characterize that use. What we're proposing to do, and we'll see a picture of it in just a second. I just want to point out some of the statistics before we get the map up. We're looking at a single launch ramp, a single concrete ramp with a fixed timber pier next to it. We're looking at about 25 parking spaces for trailers, plus 27 parking spaces for car top, for canoe launch, and maybe the continuation of the paintball facility operation. We are included soft launch area, incorporate that into the concept so we can complement that work. We can continue to use the site as a paintball facility. There is going to be limited dredging required for the site, so identify the dredging needs. And we've provided a cost, a budgetary number for the cost for the site. This first concept, I'm going to walk through it a little slowly, just so you guys get used to what we're looking at. And then the other ones we'll go through a little bit quicker because you'll be more familiar with it. This dark gray area we're showing, that's the paved area we're proposing. That's all the paving that we're proposing to do, new paving that's proposed to be done. The boat ramp itself is located here with the concrete boat ramp, 54 feet long by 15 foot wide. It's basically 15 foot wide. It's big enough for a one launch, for one boat to launch at a time. We have a joining pier, timber pier next to it. And there is some dredging that needs to be done to make sure we get to 4.5 feet deep water. So we got the boat ramp, the pier, and the dredgings. Next to the boat ramp is where we're proposing the soft canoe launch area B. And there's adequate room for a staging area where we can have the canoe launch facility away from some of the boat ramp facilities. So if we allow, try to separate those the best we can. The parking area itself, we try to make the travel path as one-way traffic wherever possible. That's some of the recommendations for the boat facilities. Try to maintain one-way traffic so the trailer boats are easy to maneuver. So for this, I'll walk through it. The boater will come in, go around the loop here, launch, come out, and go park in the trailer spot. So and then when to leave, they'll pull out, go around, come in, load, and then leave. So we were conscientious of travel paths, and we try to incorporate that into our designs. Parking spaces, we're looking for using grass pavers or pervious paving for all the parking spaces. So we're recognizing that the boat ramps typically get used mostly in weekends, in good weather, so no sense having all the parking area paved with the impervious paving. So all the parking spaces we're proposing are going to be grass, some sort of pervious pavement. Right, for this site, we believe we can fit about 25 trailer spaces. The trailer spaces are, I would consider on the large side, they're 12 foot wide by 50 foot long. So those are built for pretty large, easy to get in and out. We're also including additional 27 parking spaces for car top parking for a soft canoe launch to be used. And we're also including an area for the paintball facility operations to continue. We believe there's no reason to necessarily separate the paintball to stop the paintball operations at the site. I think they can coexist fine. The improvements we make to the parking lot would actually help improve the paintball facility operations and be used for the soft launch facility. Some of the other elements included in the concept, we have stormwater management areas where we would be providing rain gardens or infiltrations or appropriate stormwater measures to address water quality and stormwater quantity from the site, and also because of impacts we have in the critical areas, we're proposing there could be room here for doing a buffer mitigation plantings, tree plantings, to help mitigate our any impacts we'll have because of the paving we're doing. So this site is an example. We'll go through it in a little bit of detail. Example of what some of the things we incorporated. The mitigation requirements, we incorporated the parking access, the boating need, the dredging need, the canoe, the soft launch area, all of it coexists together. The site we picked is the site near the existing soft launch area, the existing dilapidated boat ramp. So we kind of said, okay, if this is where the old boat ramp was, let's keep boating in the same general area. Chris, did I miss anything?
Nope, I think you're good.
Good, thank you. Beechwood Park, next site we looked at, that's on the north shore of Magathie River. It's a historic wharf with public access and used as a resort beach. We looked at the 1950s photograph, 40s photograph where there was a wharf there was a public beach, and there was amusement activity going on the site. So there's a history of public use at the site. There's an existing soft launch facility at the site. We were conscientious to make sure we address that, and there is a limited parking on site. This is an access that will go down to the existing soft launch area, and there's a photo of that. And our proposed access will be similar in that same area. Again, similar to the previous site, I won't go too much detail here. Single launch ramp with a fixed pier, 25 trailer, 24 trailer, 25 car parking. Again, because of the dual use aspect of it, we have trailer boats and we have car tops, so we're trying to make the dual use aspect of it. We are going to make improvements to the existing launch facility, improve access to the existing soft launch facility, and there's the cost for this project. Here's the schematic of it. We can see again. We looked at this is the one we looked at multiple locations.
Yep.
And we ended up with this location here for the boat ramp, which is follows the footprint of where the existing soft launch is. The soft launch is over here, so that would stay undisturbed. We're looking at going adjacent to it, building a more of a engineered access path with a turnaround area for trailers and launch facility. Again, the boat ramp, the dredging, the pier, similar to the other project we just talked about. And the parking would be on top with the car parking and the trailer parking. Some of the numbers I mentioned earlier. We did include a landscaping buffer there to try to keep the parking area separated from the road. And we also have some stormwater management features in there as the site. This area that we proposed was historically cleared in the past.
It was previous parking for the resort we spoke about earlier.
So again, we're trying to follow the footprint of those before us. So this area was previously cleared. The trees aren't as heavily as old as some of the other trees in the park are. Spriggs Farm, another Tier 1 projects, again, continue with the same process. It's in the South Shore of Magathie now. We're looking at the South Shore of Magathie. It's a large, there's some of the key elements that we helped drive our concept was the large unforested area, the meadow, I think the area there. There's a photo of it down here. It does have the existing soft launch facility, does have eroding shoreline, some of those things we recognize, and there are documented as AV beds along portions of the shoreline. So those were things that we documented and helped drive our decision process. For this one, we're actually proposing a double launch ramp versus a single one compared to the previous one. The biggest driving factor for that was the topography, the ability to fit a wider boat ramp on the site, the openness of the meadow area where there was less tree clearing, I think it was helped drive that. So we have 50 trailer parkings as opposed to some of the other ones that were less. So this site has the potential to have as many as 50 trailer parkings there. 20 car parkings, again, trying to address the soft launch issue and the access. We're looking at dredging is another issue for this site that's a little bit different than other sites. We do anticipate dredging and we anticipate need for routine maintenance dredging for this site. So we do need to take that into account for long-term operation, that there would be the maintenance dredging need for that site if we pick this site. And we did come up with a new entrance road from Bayberry Drive. So it's not the existing entrance, it's not we propose a new entrance way off of Bayberry Drive. The cost is significantly more than the other site for two reasons. For one reason, it's a bigger facility. It has more trailer parking, it has a double ramp. So it's actually a good cost-efficient site because of the number of slips, number of parking spaces it provides, and the two double ramp. So it's an efficient site, but it has a higher upfront cost. Here's the schematic of what that would look like. Here's a double boat ramp, two ramps with a long floating pier in between. That's a little bit different than the two other sites we looked at. So now we're looking at the floating pier with the two concrete ramps. And this red area here, that's actually the amount of dredging that the dredging that would be needed to provide access to 4.5-foot deep water back here. For other aspects, again, here's the entrance road. It's different than, it's not over here and it's not off the sheet. That's the entrance we're proposing. We felt that was a reasonable place to place an entrance. The access road will come in, again, turn around, launch, go back and park your trailers there. Again, the traffic pattern works. Particularly, this is the area where we feel that incremental would work well as far as additional parking, or so necessarily would work well here. So maybe we don't need to necessarily do all the parking up front. That's something that can be worked out as the design progresses. We also including mitigation area again. There was adequate room here for do some reforestation to actually help improve, address the critical area issues. There is some grading that needs to be done right at the bank because the banks are high, so we would be doing some grading of the banks and laying the banks back. So again, numbers, we talked about it. We got also something I didn't mention. I know all these sites we're putting in accessible facilities. So they're all going to be ADA compliant. We are including meeting the boating guidelines for providing ADA accessible facilities. So those are all included in all of our concepts. Keep going. Quiet Waters Park, again, that was also another Tier 1 project. Now we are going down to South River. We're in the North Shore of South River. It's largest and most active park in the county. What comes with that is there's quite a bit of existing infrastructure there to use, and we want to maximize the existing infrastructure in the county park. So we're going to go ahead and try to, we looked at multiple sites, and we found a site that we feel would utilize the existing infrastructure in the park the best. Keep going here. We are proposing a single launch ramp, fixed pier. Again, this is going back to the smaller footprint that we had at some of the earlier sites. 24 trailer parkings. There's 43 existing car parkings next to the area we're proposing. So that's, again, using existing facilities to our benefit. We're going to just use the existing car parking there. Very little bit of dredging, and the cost is more reasonable to some of the other sites. I think just to kind of place everybody, this is you're coming down Entrance Road down this way, and then the promenade is down here somewhere. And so we're coming off of Quiet Waters Road. And there's existing parking adjacent to it. So we're coming off of that existing area, creating an access road down to the water. Here's the boat ramp, a little bit of dredging, boat ramp up here, turnaround area, ADA accessible parking space down by the water. And then everybody else will come back up and park here, which is an existing parking facility, but it's for cars. So we're going to convert it. We're going to actually tear up the gravel and put grass pavers there and convert it from a gravel parking or kind of informal parking there into a formal trailer parking spaces here. So it does have, again, areas for reforestation. We have areas for stormwater management. Those things are addressed as part of this. South River Farm Park, it's on the south shore of South River. Right now, I think the park has a lot passively used. There's a existing county maintenance facility on site. There's a small pier on the property, and there's other park improvements that are being considered. There was some previous studies done that implied that there were some other parks being considered by the park. So we did look at some of those information also. We're looking for a pretty small, this is one of the smaller facilities we've looked into. I think there's a lot of environmental issues at the site, so we do have one of the smallest footprints we have proposed. Single boat ramp with a fixed pier, 25 trailer parking, only 10 car parking. As again, we try and keep the footprint smaller. Still manage to sneak in a soft launch facility at the site, and limit the dredging, and the cost is compared to the other sites. If you can see, right here there's some historical areas we try to avoid. There's some wetlands nearby, so that's why the access road is kind of serpentine, trying to avoid some of these regulated resources. We feel comfortable that we can get access to the site and leave those resources with minimum impact. The parking is smaller, and the footprint is controlled in order to provide access adequate for boating needs, but again, be conscientious of environmental footprints. Stony Creek, this was the only project we can consider to be Tier 2. What that means that this is a project that we feel like it's technically feasible, but because it's close to Fort Smallwood Park, we weren't necessarily sure if it's something that the county would want to jump into it, because there's a need that's being addressed through the existing Fort Smallwood Park. Again, this single launch facility, 25 trailer, 10 car parking, and smaller footprints there, and you see the cost for it. And here's a concept of what could be done at the site if county, we decide to move forward with this project. So it's fine, we're good. And then Sullivan Park, this is a park that Tier 3 projects. This is a project that we felt was not feasible to do. It's an undeveloped park with informal soft launch area. Excellent. And here's some of the reasons. It lacked navigable access. It's in the very, very headwaters and it's shallow water. So it's something that we feel like it was not necessarily suited for a boat launch facility. That the shallow water habitat, it makes it likely to be unacceptable environmental impacts. We believe that the regulatory agencies will have consider the impacts unacceptable. There's also steep topography, forest cover. There was a lot of things going against this site. We feel the site is better suited for a soft launch facility. Low impact, a soft launch facility would be better suited for the site than a trailer boat launch facility. Carth Wharf, it's also a Tier 3 project. It's on the north shore of Rhodes River. It's about a 1 acre site and it's mostly wetlands. There is a 300-foot timber pier there, and there's existing soft launch area. There's an unimproved boat launch area there. Very limited parking, and the site mostly is being used by locals, I think, for kayak and canoe launch, maybe a small trailer boat launch, but there really isn't adequate parking to do anything at the formal boat ramp for the county. What we did look at, however, was if there's anything we could do to help support the current use and basically help formalize the current use and existing use and make it improve on it. And if it becomes, so we looked at doing a single launch ramp, one ADA accessible trailer parking, a little bit of dredging, that's it. There really is no parking space available to do anything more than that. And I think, again, the site seems unfeasible because of the lack of space for parking and the environmental impacts associated with the impacts of the wetlands. We think the county could revisit this site actually if we could address the parking issue there. If there's a nearby parking that could be found, I think the site could come back up into Tier 1 round if we could actually address the parking issue at the site. Here's what we think could be done, not addressing the parking issue. We improved the road, added turnabout area, a concrete ramp. We have a pier already, so we just provide a little bit of dredging to provide access to it. And the parking would be somewhere off sheet. So conclusions, we came up with 3 tiers. Again, the sites are listed by tier, but we did not make any difference, charter did not distinguish between the tiers. So we did not try to rank in between the tiers. So tier 1 projects are listed from north to south. That's the order. Tier 2 and tier 3 projects. So those are our conclusions for the study. I think it's important to point out that we believe this is a good starting point to look at these 8 sites. This isn't necessarily answer to all the potential other sites or all the other options available to the county, but at these 8 sites, we have a good starting point for future design on any of these parks. We also believe that by implementing these, we're going to be able to address a major part of the need that we discussed when we started. We can help get that. And this is an excerpt out of our study. That's our fine line. Again, I want to reiterate, the sites will be subject to rigorous regulatory review and permitting process. Will require mitigation for any unavoidable environmental impacts. Public education, outreach will be critical in gaining public support and acceptance for new boat launch facility at these county parks. I'll just leave with that. That's it.
Very nice, thank you.